Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry and Celebrate Life Today. And I am your host, Pastor Rhonda. I'm so happy to have you here with us today. And just a little bit about Celebrate Life Today. We are a health and wellness show. We want to bring health and wellness, not just on cancer, but other health challenges as well, so that we can be a well informed community. And today I have with me my friend and brother, Dontá Morrison. Hey, Dontá.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, simply marvelous. Glad to have you here with us today.
I am glad to be here. I am sharing it on my page right now to pull all of my people in.
All right, all right. Well, I welcome everyone to come on in and make comments and ask questions. If as we just have a conversation about HIV and the community. So let me tell you a little bit about my friend Dontá Morrison. He's a Los Angeles-based community change agent focused on building bridge gaps that improve the lives of marginalized individuals. And currently, as the Associate Director of the HIV Prevention Services at APLA Health and Wellness, he oversees several government funded programs that provide HIV and STI prevention strategy to those most at risk for infection. And that is the conversation that we're going to have today, because as I realize, a lot of people think that HIV and AIDS is a very quiet, um, subdued conversation. It's a
Mhm.
conversation that was big in the 70s and the 80s, but we don't really have that anymore. And we're here to share with you today that that's not quite how it is. So,
Right.
I'm allowing Dontá to finish typing and sharing.
I'm getting the folks up in here. I'm getting up in here.
so that we can chat. So if his face goes down, just don't worry about that. He's
Right.
still talking. So
Right. I
Dontá,
am definitely here.
so why don't you go ahead and let us know now? How did you get involved in this HIV community?
Wow, that's a great question. Basically, I was clueless to HIV, and everyone knows HIV entered, our bandwidth in the early '80s. And in the early '80s, I was in middle school. I was in elementary school, middle school. I'm hearing about this disease that was affecting, white gay men, and I'm like, oh well, that's not my problem. I'm in the fifth grade, sixth grade. And I went through, just my life, like kind of, I don't want to say ignorant, but it wasn't on my radar because I didn't fit the population that was always being talked about as becoming infected or contracting the virus. And I don't think I got a wake up call until like Easy E and Magic Johnson. I was like, oh, this is something this is black folks. This is black folks that don't identify as gay or don't, live within the gay community or whatnot. So I said, okay, let me kind of check it out. Well, then in 1999, I was diagnosed with HIV, and I was like, "Wow, it got me, it hit me," and it was a shock to my system for one because I was not involved in the conversations about HIV and AIDS. I wasn't going to the groups, I wasn't going to the rallies, I wasn't out there making noise trying to educate people. I was just someone that was like living my life, and then next thing I knew, I'm getting a positive result. From that, I realized that there were also a lot of other individuals out there that was in the same boat as myself, not knowledgeable about the virus, not on the front lines when it came to talking about HIV, not really just in the movement, for lack of a better word. And I saw the absence of information, and I realized that this was a space for me to occupy, to get out there and really let kids know what was going on, kids in the inner city, black kids, to let them know that HIV is real. It could happen to them, and it's something we got to talk about on the regular. And I have been working in the field, like getting paid to work in the field since 2004. That's when I really entered the field, but I've been advocating about the virus since 2000.
Awesome. So, what is the difference between HIV and AIDS? Is there?
There is a difference. There is definitely a difference, and that is a great question because a lot of people don't realize that there is a difference. Some folks walk around saying, "Oh my God, this person has AIDS. This person has this. And no, there is a distinct difference between HIV and AIDS. We're going to educate right now. So let me see. I'm still tagging people to get up in here. Let folks know.
Okay.
So the difference is basically we all have a T cell count, so our white blood cells. So a person that has that's HIV negative, your T cells range between 1,500 and up. That you have a healthy T cell count. Once you contract AIDS or basically any kind of virus that's going to combat your T cells begin to plummet and they drop. When your T cells hit 200 and go below, that's when a person is clinically diagnosed as having AIDS. So I'm not sure if it's still the same, but in times past, people that were given an AIDS diagnosis, even if their T cells climbed back up thanks to medication and advancements in science, they were still on paper listed as having AIDS. So, for example, when I was diagnosed with HIV, I had no signs, no symptoms, but my T cell count was 225. So I was diagnosed with HIV. My T cells thankfully never dropped below 200, but had they dropped below 200 on paper, I would have been diagnosed with AIDS. And to this day, I would still be considered as having AIDS. A lot of social justice movements are trying to move away from AIDS diagnosis because it fluctuates. So we're always hearing AIDS conference, AIDS talk, AIDS this, AIDS that. But because we have all this medication, people can fluctuate, and then AIDS is such a demonizing moniker to attach to someone. When we hear people have AIDS, we instantly think death. We instantly go to Tom Hanks in the movie Philadelphia. We think of the lesions and the weight loss and all that kind of stuff. And when a person hears AIDS, mentally they just freak out like, oh my God, I am going to die. But that's not the case. That is really not the case nowadays. Thanks to a lot of advancements in medication, people can live, long, healthy, normal lives with an HIV diagnosis. You're muted.
Okay. So, wow. So, what is it that we can do once you've been diagnosed? What are some things that people can do or need to do, or what kind of signs should they be looking for?
Get into treatment. I mean, if a person is diagnosed with HIV, one of the main reasons why people still succumb to the virus is they're not in treatment and they're not in care. And treatment means, I'm not saying get on medication, I'm just saying get in care. Have a doctor overlook you. Be in constant communication with a medical professional to watch your viral load, to watch your T cells, to look at the rest of your body functions. And I know one thing about Black people, we only go to the doctor when we sick. When it comes to regular checkups, that's not something that's on our calendar. We don't calendar out a few days to go to the doctor, go to the optometrist, go to the dentist. We don't do all that. We only go in states of emergency because it's not something that we view as being critical, or important. So a person that is diagnosed with HIV, early on, they should get into treatment. They should get into some kind of clinic, AIDS care organization or something where they can be monitored. That is key because you want to know how your body is doing. How is your body reacting to this virus in your system? What are your levels doing? What is your blood doing? How is the medication helping you, or is it not helping you? So getting into care is key. And I think that anyone that is either diagnosed or knows someone who has been diagnosed, we need to be pushing them to get into care.
So, what kind of signs do we look for? Because when I think about it, I have never had a doctor ask me if I wanted an HIV test.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had them say that we're just going to run it just because I go for a physical. What purpose is a
Right.
physical if you're not doing everything that could be? So, and it's just that no one's ever asked. I never thought about it. So, what do I don't even know what signs to look for.
Well, unfortunately, there is no signs right now. There are no signs to a person that has HIV. Unlike other illnesses, you get this kind of feeling, like something is off. But with HIV, by the time a person realizes that they have been infected, normally the virus has been in their system for quite some time. There are a lot of people walking around right now who are living with HIV but have no idea because they're not getting tested on the regular, or they have never been tested ever. So it's not as though once you contract HIV, you're instantly going to feel that there's something in your system. It's not like that. It's not like pregnancy. Women know that something has happened, something is different, something is off, but HIV does not work that way. And I know that a lot of people rely on it and say, well, what are the signs? What are the symptoms? How will I know if I have it? The only way you know is if you get tested.
Wow.
And I say that with so much urgency because I've come across so many of us, and I say us Black people, who have never had an HIV test, or they still walk around with the ignorance thinking that HIV only happens to gay people, or HIV only happens to those that creep around or whatever. That's not the case. If you have been intimate with anyone and you do not know their HIV status, you have put yourself at risk for HIV infection. So any kind of intimate act that you're having with someone and you don't know their HIV status, just because they look a certain way, they smell a certain way, their teeth are sparkling white, their hair is combed, that doesn't mean they're HIV negative. It means absolutely nothing. So it's important to incorporate HIV testing into your regular healthcare regimen.
So that's pretty good. So what do you do? Say, excuse me, can I see your health card first? Like, how do you have that conversation?
listen, the way yeah. Before we do this, right? But I got some questions before we do this. But no,
right.
I think that we need to begin to educate people on how to have those uncomfortable conversations. And it's like people don't want to have the conversation until after they've done the do. They finish what they got to do. They got their liquor, they got their cigarette, they got their chicken wings, and now they want to say, so hey, I forgot to ask you before, have you ever had anything? And it's too late. At that point, you've come in contact. You've possibly been exposed. So we have to begin to normalize conversations about sexual health pre-sex. It should be a part of the dialogue. And I don't know why people are so squeamish about talking about it, but not squeamish about doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a real good point. But let's figure out what can that conversation look like, because
Okay.
I don't want to jump past that.
Right.
There's too many people right there at that place, and I'll say single or not. There's just people.
Right.
But how do you have that conversation? What do you say? Because I remember there was a gentleman. 75-year-old guy. He was a 2-time prostate cancer survivor.
Wow.
And he came to me and he started the conversation out with pastor.
Okay. Okay.
And he said, how do I tell women about my prostate cancer? How do I have that conversation? And I said, well, first of all, single man, you came to the pastor.
Right.
You say, Rhonda, I got a question.
Right.
You came to the pastor. So number one, you ought not be doing that anyway. That's number one. But seeming that it's going to occur anyway, you need to have the conversation. You need to talk about it. If they are serious enough to move to the next step, then it ought to be serious enough to have that conversation.
Right. But we haven't normalized it. We haven't made people feel comfortable having that conversation. We haven't made people feel comfortable just being sex positive. So there's so much shame when it comes to sex and intimacy that people, especially Black people, don't really know how to even start that conversation. For example, if a woman begins to start that conversation, she doesn't want to be perceived as loose, when in fact, she's really empowered. because she is taking control of the narrative. She is like, yo, if you want to be intimate with me, if you want a piece of this, then we need to have a conversation. I'm not going to allow you to have all of me without me not knowing anything about you. And women need to understand that in the bedroom, you need to take control the narrative, and don't just give all your liberties away because you're trying to be submissive or be, or not ruffle feathers. Same with men. Men need to better understand how to have healthy conversations about sex when it comes to women. What do we need to talk about on this first date? Is the first date too soon? But usually on that first date, when you go into it, you already know if this is a date to get to know for long term, or if this is just a jump off. Because sometimes that dinner is just a buffer. It's just a filler. It's like y'all don't really want to eat. Y'all don't really connect to really eat. Y'all connected to hook up afterwards. And until people get to the mindset of being comfortable talking about what they really want, when it comes to intimacy, romance, relationships, we're always going to have these obstacles. So it is really time that we deprogram how people enter into conversations about sex and don't make it so taboo, because everybody is doing it. Saved, unsaved, Jew, Gentile, saint, sinner, everybody is doing it. And like you said, the individual came to you as the pastor. So we have to also train pastors how to sit and have these conversations. And I think that if pastors really want to be involved like they say they do in the lives of their people, they cannot sit there and be like, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Well, I knew that before I came to you, but I'm coming to you for advice.
Right.
I didn't come here for a sermon. I know what to do. I grew up in church. I know the rights and wrongs and all of that. I didn't come to you for that. I came to you to get some words of wisdom on how to navigate this situation, because my body's telling me one thing, my spirit is saying something else, and then I got Tyrone and Jaheim and LaQuisha and all of them looking beautiful. So, Pastor, what we gonna do? How do we talk about this?
Right.
So when it comes to HIV, what I always tell people, HIV is a heart disease. People want to feel loved. People want to be touched. People want to know that they still got what it takes to get somebody. They don't go out to get HIV. HIV is a byproduct of trying to fill a void in your heart that has been missing because you long for intimacy.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. So the other conversation that I've been hearing lately is that HIV is for the young people.
Yeah. Sadly, a lot of folks think that. Yeah. Sadly. Yeah, that's they think that, well, we all know that's not true. We all know that's not true. So let me tell you why. Because there's this little blue pill called Viagra. All right. So we got Viagra. So let's just say you have one man, one mature, seasoned gentleman. He's in his peak. He is retired. He got his boat. He got his Cadillac. He got his money. He gets his pension. He's good. He have nothing to worry about. All his kids are grown. His grandkids are doing fine. He is surrounded by beautiful women of all ages, and he wants to still be virile. All right. So in his morality, his mindset is not thinking about, well, I need to wear a condom, because we got to understand older generations, condoms and birth control was so they don't get pregnant. So that mindset is, I don't want to get nobody pregnant. We got Pop is like, well, I can't get nobody pregnant, so ain't no sense in me wrapping this thing up. Then we got Lillian and Myrtle and Myra and Beulah May and all them. They can still function. They can still do it. Sex does not stop when you get to a certain age. They still want to be touched. They still want to be loved. They still want all of that. So if we have one man, and we know women outlive men, okay, I'm putting this all together. Women outlive men. We got one man. None of them want commitment because they're either widows or widowers. They've been in love before. They don't want love. They want intimacy. Seniors like intimacy. because they know they can't get pregnant. They know ain't nothing else gonna happen. They are older. They know their bodies. They're functioning. So we have this blue pill. We got Luther. Okay, he's feeling it now. We got all these queens around Luther. They're not competing, but they just want Luther. They want to taste the Luther, come on Luther, and then go on back where you came from. Luther has now been with everybody. And because Luther is this virile old man, Luther's also pulling some young ones. And when Luther gets lonely, Luther may resort to an escort or a woman of the street. No judgment. So Luther is being exposed to all kind of stuff. Luther infects 1, Luther infects 2, Luther infects 3, because Luther is the rooster in the hen house. All right. Hence why we see so many outbreaks of HIV within senior living facilities, our senior retirement places. You go down to Florida, where everybody is retired, living their best life. Their best life also includes sex. So imagine being a 76, 77-year-old woman, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor is like, hey, you tested positive for HIV. Imagine what she's going to go through her mind. Like, what do you mean? HIV is for them young ones. HIV is for them gay folks. HIV is for that, because we didn't educate that demographic about HIV risks. We don't go into the retirement homes and the senior living facilities, and we don't do workshops about safer sex, because in our mind, we can't imagine Medea and them getting busy. But Medea and them, they get busy, and they get busy well, and they get busy often. So when it comes to HIV, the H stands for human. It is the human immunodeficiency virus. If you are human and you are able to be intimate in any way, shape, form, or fashion, you are at risk for HIV. And we have done our seniors a gross disservice by not educating them on sexual health, because we're looking at a demographic that grew up in the era of VD and the clap, but all the stuff that's going on now, they're not knowledgeable of that. Some of them were married to the same person for decades. And now that they're single, their body is still responding and reacting. So they're engaging in behaviors with each other. We got to do a better job of educating our seniors on sexual health, because seniors are having sex.
And because there are no signs that you have this. No. So you can't, because I understand that one of the things that they do is they tell you, you have been infected, now go get your partner.
Right.
Well, but if you've had, if the rooster has had many hens, where do you go? Because now you might be telling somebody that has not been affected that you are, and that's just a whole nother conversation.
And roosters can be male or female.
Wow.
Let's not restrict it to just the brothers. It's a lot of female roosters out there that is doing some things. And can you imagine, sitting in front of a doctor and saying, well, here's my list, and it's a scroll of people that now they got to call and say, well, you may have been exposed. Now the bigger picture is this person that slept with that one person, but that one person that slept with multitudes as well. So we talk about sex. Sex is widespread. Sex is a real each one reach one type activity. So just because you got this one person that has HIV and you got them, you still don't know how many folks, the people that they have slept with. And that's why I say we have to get to the mindset and the mentality of having conversations on those first, second, third dates. Before you're intimate with somebody, you got to have that conversation. What's up? No judgment, but how active are you? Is your condom use 100%, 10%, no percent? Let's keep it real. I'm not judging you. I'm not even saying, no, we can't have sex. But let me be in control of how we have sex. Let me put my spin on it. If you tell me that, well, yeah, I'm kind of promiscuous, but, this moment here is all about you. Okay, that's fine. Condom is mandatory. It's mandatory. And that's for both sexes. And I think we got to make sure that people are comfortable having that talk. And I'm not sure how many folks are watching right now, but I can guarantee that a lot of people are not comfortable asking those questions about sex and intimacy. They're not. They're just not going to do it because they don't want to be deemed as loose, as a hoe, as all those other negative monikers we put on individuals who are living their best life. And my thing is, if you are single, if you're single and you want to be intimate, who am I to judge what you do? My job is to make sure you have sex safely. It is not to police how many folks you have sex with. That's not my concern.
Wow. Okay. So, like I didn't realize which direction this conversation was going to go. So, but I know there are a couple people on watching. So if you have questions, please feel free, or even a comment, feel free to put it in the chat box and we'll talk about it. So somebody says, thank you, single and free.
Right, free. That's why I call you free.
Okay. So let's say you are diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
What is the kind of care that you should take? You know what it is. You're going to the doctor. Like with many other illnesses, there should be a better way of eating. There should be exercise. There should be, what else should, I've been diagnosed, now what?
Well, I think it all starts because it really is case by case. Everyone's experience with HIV is different. Some people, they have the virus affects them differently. Some people, their viral load, their T cell count, all that, it just stays within a very healthy range. Some people, just based upon DNA or genetics, does not have that luxury. So they're instantly.
So what's a healthy range? What does that mean?
1,200 to 1,500.
Okay.
Well, 800 and above, just to because. So your T cells is what fights off infection. So no one dies from HIV, just to be clear. No one dies from AIDS. They die from complications of being exposed to the virus. So the virus that's in your system, people that are living with HIV, it is knocking out your T cells. And your T cells are what is used to fight off infection. All right. So basically, if you catch a cold, catch the flu, catch all that kind of stuff, your T cells will go to bat for you. It is your barrier. It's the barrier against all outside infections. A person that has a compromised immune system, which is anyone with HIV, compromised immune system, your barrier is being lowered. Your barrier has become weaker. So any outside kind of illness or opportunistic infection, it now has a better chance of really hitting your body and hitting it hard. Okay. So the medications that people are on, it helps to keep their T cells at a very healthy number, and it suppresses the viral loads, meaning your viral load, it pushes it down. So that ties into, I'll talk about undetectable and all that later, because that is a benefit in those healthy conversations that you may want to have with somebody pre-sex. So a person that has HIV, when they're on medications, it is boosting their T cell count. It is suppressing their viral load. And a higher T cell count, it leads to a healthier life. You want your T cell count to be as high as possible so that you can fight off all that stuff that's surrounding us every day, all day. You have a fighting chance against that.
Okay. So again, what should I do? What's the best thing I should do now that the doctor says I've been diagnosed?
Best thing you should do is get into care. So normally the doctor will, assign you a case manager and all that kind of stuff that's going to help you walk through the journey. So at my job, I work for APLA Health. So we have a linkage to care department, and a linkage to care department means those are individuals who's going to help navigate you through the care system. They're going to find out everything that you need to make sure you have the best chance possible of living a healthy life with HIV. That means they will help you get into all kind of medical services. People often get confused and think that, okay, you got HIV, that's all we need to focus on. No, because if a person has HIV, high blood pressure, diabetes, they got all this other stuff. We got to make sure that everything is working together in concert to treat the whole person. Not just that one isolated, situation, the whole person. So linkage to care persons are crucial to making sure that the individual is getting the best care possible. Also, if you're diagnosed with HIV, you need to learn how to advocate for yourself. We all know that there is studies that are all out there saying that Black people don't get, care equivalent to their white counterparts. A lot of stuff to unpack in that. But when it comes to Black health care, Black people, we need to understand the importance of just fighting for the best healthcare possible. If you don't like your physician or your doctor for some reason, you can change to someone that you like. You want to get someone who's going to understand you, understand all of you, and understand how you live your life. When I was first diagnosed, I had a phenomenal doctor, phenomenal. But I've gone through about 3 or 4 doctors because my original doctor retired. I've had physicians that didn't know how to treat people that live certain lifestyles. They were judgmental. Or they assume because you live this kind of lifestyle, I should always test you for this, and this. Like, yo, slow down. Why are you testing me for all STDs every time I come, but not asking me if I'm having sex? You're assuming I'm having sex because you know how I identify. Are you assuming I'm having sex because I have HIV? You're not asked about my sex life, but you give me all these STD tests. You're not getting to know me as a person. So if you are living with HIV, you want to be with someone that's going to understand you, understand your needs, and understand how you live. Because that kind of doctor-patient relationship is going to make a huge difference. You also want to have a doctor that's going to take the time to explain to you what those medications do when it comes to side effects. Why is it important to adhere to them? How do you take them? You want to have a doctor going to explain to you what should you expect while you're on medication. Not only your doctor, but your nurses, your case manager, even the pharmacist. I have my own doctor, I have my own nurse, I have my own pharmacist that checks me all the way around to make sure that everything I'm doing is for the betterment of my health. But when you're someone who is not advocating for your health, or you're just taking everything that the doctor tells you and you're walking out and you're still confused, that is not the doctor's fault. That is your fault. You need to sit in there and hold them hostage until you are clear on every single facet of care that you need. We can no longer just walk out of these doctors' offices and go home and then jump on Google and say, I think the doctor said this. What does that mean? No, you're paying your physician for a reason. Once you start your medication, it is important that you adhere to your medication 100%. That means take your doses every day. Take your doses when you're supposed to take them. Don't miss your doses because of all the medications that are out there now combating HIV. You still want to make sure that you are adherent because you don't want to get to the point where your body is no longer receiving what that medication should be doing because you built up a resistance. And a resistance can occur when you've been prescribed a medication and then you're not adhering to it. So you'll take it every other day. So guess what happens? In about a year's time, that medication no longer works with your system because you built up a resistance to that. So medication adherence is so important. And that's when your accountability partners come into play and all that. Because newly diagnosed individuals are still scared. And even though HIV has been out since the early 80s and has gone through all these iterations of conversation and promotion, anyone that is newly diagnosed, they still have fears, they still have concerns, they still have reservations, they still have apprehensions, and they're traumatized. They're traumatized, one, because they want to know, well, who gave it to me? How did I get this? And if they were in a monogamous relationship, did my partner cheat on me and bring this back home? So it's all this mental stuff that goes with a new diagnosis as well. So all of this plays a part in holistic care. And holistic care is so important. That means we have to care for the mental, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual. All that stuff needs to be tackled. Giving someone a pill and say, well, take this pill, you'll be fine. That's not true. They're going to need their pastor, Rhonda, to say, okay, how do I tie this into my spiritual life? Does this mean God does not love me anymore? Does this mean God has left me? When I pray, what should I say? Because I'm so embarrassed and ashamed. I know that I've let God down. So you got that spiritual toll. Then you got the mental toll. It's like, well, no one's going to want me now because I have HIV. No one's going to want to touch me because they're going to look at me as being dirty. How do I tell someone I have HIV? When do I disclose my HIV status? You know, what do I do if I infect somebody else? You know, that's that mental piece. Physically, it's like, okay, I'm taking this medication. Now I'm nauseous. I have insomnia. I'm fatigued. You know, I'm this, I'm that. So it's all these aspects that can happen to someone that is newly diagnosed that we have to be mindful of. So it's not just saying, okay, you tested positive, go to the doctor. No, it's how do we create villages? How do we create a community that's going to support this person through their new journey, their new normal? You know, and I think it's important for the church, you know, especially clergy, to get involved in holistic care, because it's nothing worse than having all this other stuff. But when you go to church, you got to sit there and be silent and say, well, I can't tell nobody here that I have HIV because they're going to want to know, how did I get it? And then when they find out how I get it, they're going to judge me, you know, and I don't feel like being judged. I'm already judging myself bad enough. Can someone just love me and embrace me through this? So how do we also bring in that spiritual wellness, that spiritual piece that is so crucial to our existence as people of color? We are tied spiritually, not necessarily to Christianity, but spiritually, we are so in tune with higher powers. You know, but what do we do when we're feeling alone and isolated and we want someone that's also on the same wavelength with us, or we assume they are, to come in and say, hey, I got you. I'll pray with you. I'll hold you. I'll embrace you. We'll get through this together. But take your medicine.
But take your medicine. So here's the other thing. You brought up a good point. You're like, so did my partner step out on me or cheat on me?
Mm-hmm.
And because you don't know you have it,
right?
Because by the time you find out you have it, you probably had it a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be a smidget, at least a smidget of understanding that really didn't just happen last week.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because that can really tear apart relationships for the wrong reason. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to tear a relationship apart, but the fact that it could have been long before we even started, we knew each other, and I seriously did not know.
Right.
But now we're dealing with this together. Now it's a whole new level of understanding on how to deal with this.
Right.
But at least there's one thing that you could potentially take out of your equation of saying that cheating was not it, because that's a whole nother trust level.
Exactly. And that's an excellent point. And that ties back to your initial question. How do we start those conversations? You know, there's a lot of people out there living with HIV, and they meet the perfect individual. They meet the one that's going to just make them feel loved. And, oh my God, I want to give my everything to this person. But how do I tell this person I have HIV?
Right.
How do I start that conversation? How do I let them know? Well, I don't let them know. I just make sure that we're always using condoms, you know? So we're using condoms, and then one day something happens, the condom breaks, or there's a slip up, and now I've exposed this person to HIV. And the person is not worried. They're not tripping. They're like, oh, the condom broke. We're good because I don't have nothing and you ain't got nothing, right?
Right.
You sit there like, no, you know. So when do you tell? That's that mental piece. That's that mental piece, because HIV positive individuals have been rejected over and over and over. And at some point, you're tired of being rejected, even though you're a good person. It's like, you don't want to date me because I have HIV, but you're going to date the village serial killer down the block because it's HIV negative. You know, I got job, degree, car, home, this, but I got HIV. Okay, but you're not going to date me. You rather date Leroy over there with the cutlass because he's HIV negative. You know, and it's that kind of mentality. So then it pushes people living with HIV to be like, well, I just won't tell nobody. And if we make it, we make it. If we don't, we don't. You know, I don't really know. You know, so that's a layer to that. When do you disclose? Because then if I disclose, we have this thing called social media, and hurt people. So if I tell you my HIV status in trust, and I am not public about it, and we break up for whatever reason, and you mad in your feelings, the real high schooly mentality will come out, and now all on Facebook, don't date Dontá because he got this and yada, 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 yada. Now you got Dontá wanting to kill somebody. And how does Pastor Rhonda step in and say, no, Dontá, put the gun down? No, Dante, don't stab him. That's another layer to all of this. So it's so many pieces to this thing when it comes to dating while positive, dating someone who is positive, finding out you are positive and getting into care is so many layers that I don't think the Black community fully understands or has even tried to tap into, which is why these conversations are so important.
So, is there anything that a caregiver should know, be aware of, or to be able to help the patient?
Not really. I think that by the time a person that's living with HIV gets to the point where they need a caregiver, I think whoever they get is already going to be versed and seasoned in the needs of that individual. Like I said, people now who succumb to complications to HIV, they have it's other things that are affecting their body. So it's not really the virus. It's really something else. And those caregivers usually are trained in those other illnesses that is attacking the person. They're not really treating the HIV because the HIV is not what's taking that individual out. But as far as the caregiver is concerned, I think just that human aspect is so important. And just to be transparent, people who are gay or bisexual, highest rates of infection. So being able to just be yourself and be your authentic self with an individual, especially during those last phases, if I gotta hide who I am on my deathbed, then that's a problem. That's a problem. So I think it's just entering the space with a level of compassion and understanding, which I pray any seasoned caregiver would have. I think that's just the key, making people feel like they matter and they're not just a number, which is what unfortunately a lot of people living with HIV, they feel like. They still feel like that they are just that disgrace to the community because HIV is still not put in a positive light or made to be normalized.
Wow. All right, this has truly been a great conversation. I it's just so much in my head. I don't know where to go. Like, oh my goodness, this is good stuff. So,
thanks, Paul.
Say that again.
No, I was telling Paul, thank you. I see Paul commenting. Thanks, Paul. I see a few friends watching up on here. But I really just want to say, Pastor Ron, that this conversation is important, but is not as important as people normalizing HIV testing.
Okay.
I think the normalization of HIV testing is crucial. And what most people probably don't know is when they go to their medical provider and ask for an STD panel to get tested for all STDs, they're not getting an HIV test.
Wow.
And most folks don't know that. So when you go to your doctor and say, yeah, I want to get a whole STD panel, yada, 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 they're testing you for syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea. They're not testing you for HIV. Okay.
Now don't those others have side effects? I mean, they're visible, right?
Now those are visible. Well, sometimes, okay. Yeah, sometimes, not all the time, but those are more visible than HIV. But I think that so what happens is people will get those results back, and the results will be negative, but they'll still have HIV because they never got tested for HIV. Because HIV requires a different consent form. So you must ask for HIV. Thank you, Kiana. You must ask for HIV and herpes tests. And a lot of people do not know that. So when they go to their primary care physician and have those hard conversations about, doctor, I think I may have been exposed to syphilis, they're going to test you for syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea, but not HIV and herpes. And it is so important that we incorporate that knowledge into the mindset of the people so they will know to ask for an HIV test. Okay. Also, I've heard from a lot of women that when they go to their physician and they request an HIV test, depending on the ignorance of their doctor, they'll be responding with why do you need that one? You're not in that demographic. Why do you need an HIV test? Because, believe it or not, a lot of physicians are not savvy about HIV. They're not educated on HIV, and they still think that HIV primarily hits a certain demographic, meaning gay men. So if a Black woman goes and says, I want to get an HIV test, they might get frowned upon. You don't need that. And they'll get talked out of it. And that's why I said what I said about advocating for your health. You need to speak up and let the doctor know I said what I said. Give me an HIV test now. Give me what I need, because you don't know what this person is doing when they're out of your presence. And we assume that because a man or a woman walks into the doctor's office suited and booted, all dolled up, then they're not a part of a high-risk demographic.
Right,
No,
right.
stop judging a book by its cover. People are intimate. People are intimate. And I think that they want, yep, right, being over 40, they question why I want an HIV test. Exactly, because they box people in. And they say, well, you don't look like that. Well, we're passed around that, you're a pastor, and you're a mature Black woman. You don't need that HIV test. And because you don't want your name to be shamed, you will say, yeah, you're right.
Mm.
Even though Tyrone done told you he got HIV, you gonna be like, yeah, you're right. And now you walking out feeling defeated, like, I didn't advocate for my health.
Right,
I don't
right.
want the doctor to know that I'm doing this. I don't want the doctor to know that I did that. You and the doctor are not friends. The doctor works for you.
Right, right.
Test. Get what you need.
And there are locations. I know Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science, they have a free screening for HIV. There's free screening. If your doctor, it doesn't feel like they want to be a part of that or give that to you. Now, do they ask you? I don't know if they ask for insurance when you go there, or can you just be anybody and just go in and get it?
Yeah, you don't need. They don't ask you for nothing. Any location that provides free HIV testing, you're gonna get an HIV test. It's no. Let me see your ID and Social Security card. They don't care. You don't have. Even if you have Kaiser or private insurance, you can walk into a HIV testing center and get an HIV test. Okay, that is free. And if you don't want to walk into a center, hopefully Daniel is still watching. If Daniel is still watching, I work for APLA Health, AIDS Project Los Angeles. I work for APLA Health, and I oversee the HIV prevention department. And we have an initiative called Swab and Chill, meaning we will mail an HIV test to you for free. For free. So I don't know if Daniel is still watching, but Daniel works for me. He oversees our Swab and Chill at home HIV testing initiative, and he will box it up, give you a whole little thing. You get condoms and all kind of stuff, and it will get mailed in a discreet box to your home, and he will show you how to administer an at-home HIV test kit. There are ways to get your results, people. There are ways to get HIV tested without going to a clinic, without feeling like you're sitting in a fishbowl of shame because you're in this lobby with other folks that want to know their STD status. You can get these kits mailed to you. It is possible. Even the county of Los Angeles has an at-home mailing mechanism where they'll mail the kits out to you. All of this started in response to COVID, because COVID restricted a lot of people from getting into clinics or healthcare settings for, just routine tests like that. So we launched all these initiatives so people can do so much stuff from home now. All right, so people want to get an at-home HIV test kit, just reach out to my boy Daniel at APLA Health, and he'll make it happen. Swab and Chill. Type Swab and Chill.
So you just swab inside your mouth and send it back
inside your mouth. Yep, and you get the results right there in 20 minutes at home.
What do you mean? How did they do that?
That's actually a long one. So the 20-minute test was the old school rapid test. That was the old school rapid test. We now have tests, you get your results in 60 seconds.
So does it change colors? Does it, is it a line like the pregnancy test?
It's like a pregnancy test.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a pregnancy test. So
but I'm stuck on something else. I'm going back to the cheater. I don't know why that's stuck in my head. But okay.
That's Kiana talking about that.
Okay. So on the cheater, okay. So if my spouse comes to me and says, I've recently been diagnosed, right now, because there's no symptoms, they would not know that they could have had it 10 years ago, and it's just now getting a test. But the reality is, I could have gave it to him.
You could have,
and that's never what comes. The one who finds out first ends up being the accused. It seems like. Even when in reality, it could be the one being told that
And
actually gave it to them.
that does happen. That does happen. We have another initiative at my job. We do couples testing, so couples can come in and they can go through the whole HIV testing process together. So they will do the test together and they'll get their results at the same time. Now, when you got both of them in there and they both test positive, you can imagine who's looking at who. It's like, well, did you give it to me? I don't know. Did you give it to me? So that does happen, and it becomes a blame game and finger pointing because no one wants to be the dirty one first. They want to be able to track it back to how they got it. That's not always possible. But again, that goes into conversations when you first start dating. Before you are intimate with someone, why are we not having these conversations? One thing that happens with me quite often when I was a regular tester, women will come and get an HIV test, and throughout the course of the counseling session, I would say, you're in a relationship, and she say, yeah, I am. Okay, is your partner here? No, he's not. Well, does your partner need an HIV test? No, he ain't got nothing. Well, why are you here? Well, just to make sure. Make sure what? Just to make sure. But I'm like, if you just told me your partner don't have nothing, you've been monogamous with him for 2 years, but you're here to get an HIV test. What are we not willing to admit? What are women not willing to admit in that kind of situation? What is not being said? Because you can't trust somebody and still be sitting in my clinic getting an HIV test. So either you're doing something and you're dabbling and you don't want to take it back home to him, or you have this feeling, this women's intuition, that he's dabbling and he might have given something to you. But we're not unpacking all of it. We're not unpacking it. So it comes down to self-empowerment. You owe it to yourself to have these conversations before you engage in sex with someone. You owe it to yourself. It's not about the other person feeling comfortable. It's about you being in a situation where you are in control. So that if something does happen, if that person does admit to having HIV, you are now in control of how you want to move forward. And that comes with asking the person, are you undetectable? See how I segued that up in there?
Undetectable.
Undetectable. So persons living with HIV. So I am undetectable. That means that I take my medication regularly. I'm adherent to my medication. So my viral load is undetectable. So there's a thing called U equals U. Everyone that's watching, Google U equals U, HIV. Undetectable equals untransmittable. So a person that has HIV, and if they are undetectable, meaning that they are adhering to their medication, they're in care and all that kind of stuff, they cannot transmit HIV.
Okay,
they cannot.
Yeah, I felt that. Let that settle in.
Yeah, let that simmer. Let that simmer just a little bit. Let that simmer just a little bit. So what I always tell people, if they're in a serodiscordant relationship, so a serodiscordant relationship means one partner is positive, one partner is negative. What you want to do is you want to see if your positive partner is undetectable. If your partner is undetectable, okay, they cannot transmit HIV to you. So you're good. You're good. That's a serodiscordant relationship. So Daniel just pointed how you can get a free at-home HIV test kit. All right. So Daniel J oversees that program at APLA Health. You can call that number 323-329-9713. Or just email swabandchill@apla.org, and Daniel will answer the phone. He'll respond back, and you will get that kit mailed out to you. All right. Period. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate that. So that is undetectable. That's what that is all about. All right. Also, there's a thing called PrEP, which is biomedical HIV prevention. So PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis, and you've all seen that commercial. It's Truvada for PrEP. You've all seen that. So PrEP basically is a pill that persons who are HIV negative, you take that pill once a day, and that builds a barrier in your system where the odds of you contracting HIV is slim to none. Slim to none.
Oh, they don't tell you that in that commercial.
They don't tell you that. They don't break it down. They don't break it down. So PrEP is for everybody. Unfortunately, most people think that PrEP is for gay individuals or folks like that. Anybody can get on PrEP, regardless of sexual orientation or whatever. If you are someone who is engaging in sex, you love sex, but you don't like condoms, you don't like all that kind of stuff, you can get on PrEP. All right. PrEP it's once a day, every single day. And if you are in a serial discordant relationship, that's one positive, one negative, a serial discordant relationship, and you're on PrEP as a negative person, and your partner is undetectable. Guess what? You're protected. Your partner's undetectable, so they can't transmit HIV. On top of that, you're on PrEP, taking your pill every single day, so you have another block. Your relationship is normal when it comes to risk for HIV infection. It won't happen. It won't happen. Also, and lastly, another prevention tool is PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis. This is the one that does not get talked about. There's no commercials for it. So post-exposure prophylaxis is what you can take up to 72 hours after becoming exposed to HIV. It will lower your chance of contracting the virus or serial converting to positive status. All right. So meaning if you engage in, let's say, intimacy on tonight with someone, and then after you finish, the person says, "Oh my God, I forgot to tell you, I have HIV." There was no protection involved. There was no barriers used. Instead of getting mad, instead of breaking a bottle, just calmly say, "Okay." And you can call Daniel, or you can call me and say, "Dante, Daniel, I've been exposed to HIV. We will get you to the clinic and we will get you on PEP, post-exposure. Post-exposure, after you've been exposed. PrEP is pre-exposure, before you get exposed. So post-exposure prophylaxis is what you will take. But you have to take it. You have to take it within 72 hours of being exposed. So, Pastor Rhonda, thinking that 72-hour window, when do you think is the busiest day for people to get on PEP?
On Saturday?
Monday.
Okay.
Monday. Because they get busy Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And now they're blowing up the phone and banging on the clinic door on Monday. "I need PEP. I need some PEP." Like, well, how was your weekend? No judgment, but how was your weekend? So, and that's something that people don't know. So if people would access PEP and get on PEP, it would also help with lowering the rates of new diagnoses nationwide. PEP and PrEP are phenomenal tools to decrease the rate of new HIV infection.
Amen.
That's it.
So let me ask one thing before we go.
All right.
One thing before we go. Regarding research, HIV research, is there a way that a person can get involved with research, or is it something that is prominent? Is it around? What do we need to know about cancer research?
Cancer research or HIV research?
I'm sorry, HIV research.
You taking my shine. You focus on cancer. You don't pull your ministry in. Somebody.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
No, that's an excellent question. When it comes to research, one thing that we do know is that communities of color are not as involved in HIV research as we need them to be. And that is because of medical mistrust. Similar to the whole COVID vaccine, communities of color, there's just a lot of medical mistrust within communities of color. So when it comes to HIV research, a lot of stuff that we need to learn about HIV within Black and Brown communities, we're having difficulties because normally the pool that jumps in these research trials are white people. And we all know that the white experience is totally different than the Black experience and the Latino experience. It's totally different. So in order to best understand how a lot of this stuff works within marginalized communities, Black people and brown people, Black people and brown people have to jump into these research studies. There's a lot of stuff out there that is being formed right now, that is being researched and examined to try to just really stop HIV and to end the epidemic. That's one thing we always hear, in the epidemic, EHE, in the HIV epidemic. So it's a lot of stuff out there that's happening. For those that may be interested, you can always reach out to me and I can say, hey, well, this is going on right now. This is happening over here. And it's usually nationwide studies. It's stuff that's always jumping off. If you want to learn more about HIV research, you can always reach out to me and I can send you gobs of articles, but sometimes the articles can be a bit, dense. It's like, well, I don't understand none of this, but it's still important for us to know what they are doing within our communities. That way, when stuff hits the forefront, we're not caught off guard. When it comes to stuff like PrEP and PEP, biomedical HIV prevention, that has been around since the early 2000s, but it didn't really generate momentum until about 5 or 6 years ago. But it had been researched, for almost a decade before it hit the masses. And I think that's the things that people don't realize. Nothing really comes overnight. It really has been in phases for years before the general public was really made aware of it. And that's because we have participants that signed up for these research studies and they jump in. So we know how it will affect different populations. So it really is important that we get more invested and more involved in research when it comes to HIV because it's necessary.
Awesome. 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 So just to go back just for a second and talk about how to if anyone needs some assistance or wants a free at-home HIV kit, you can contact Swab and Chill at
Yep.
323-329-9713 or email swabandchill at apla.org. Awesome, awesome, awesome. This has been a informative conversation. Like I said, I had no idea where it was going to go, but it's definitely an excellent conversation. Dante, my friend, my brother, I thank you for coming on and sharing with us today. And Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry, we have this weekly talk show and on Celebrate Life Today with Pastor Rhonda. And as we fade away today, and we say until next time, choose life.